and welcome back to episode number 79 of Raise the Banner podcast. Ben's MIA today, as usual, prioritizing his family. That piece of shit. But back together as usual, Zach Brewitt, myself, Matt Couture. How you doing today, Zach?
Doing well.
All right, let's jump right into it, though. Boston Red Sox, they did squeak out a win today with the shortest walk-off home run in Red Sox history. Rafael snuck it along the pesky pole. The entire bench was oh shit, we won type of moment because they know.
Dave O'Brien's at the same thing. His call was like, oh shit, that's out. We walked it up.
Yeah, it was a little bit shocking. I didn't see it live, but I was watching videos of it. But yeah, that's where I want to start because obviously the Red Sox have been struggling as of late. They continue to play terribly inconsistent baseball. And the title of this episode kind of is where I want to start, and it's the question to you, and it's where's Roman? When is he coming? Why isn't he here? Go at it.
Yeah, the noise is definitely getting louder, right? It was kind of the topic of discussion at the beginning of the season, even in spring training. Which of the three is going to be called up? Obviously, Christian Campbell got the nod to start. Meyer's already up, but the best one of the three is still in AAA. I think with the Jarren Duran conversation about, not being shopped, but potentially getting, they're getting calls from the Padres and other teams. I think that's probably a precursor to like him coming up relatively soon. And I think that's going hand in hand with Rafaela being streaky, and also Willie Abreu's bat has been pretty much MIA for the better part of a month now too. So it's definitely coming. But the concern is it going to be too little too late? We're already 5 games under 500, like 10 games back of first place. Just completely not where you expected to be at this point. I know we had Lucy Burge on beginning of the season, and everyone was basically clamoring that we're going to win the World Series. Like after every win, she still puts Red Sox are going to win the World Series. But with every loss, like these past couple of weeks have gone, it's gone, less and less. So Roman Anthony's coming. But again, the concern with him and with what they're doing to him is it going to be too little too late? Is it already too late? Is the season already gone? And there's really just no excuse for keeping him down in the minors. Like it's kind of been all over Twitter. We've talked about it for the past month and a half, it feels like. But no, I think that with the Duran news of him, being the target of Padres for trades and other teams as well, I think that's like Red Sox PR for being like, there's an avenue for him to get moved up. The shakeup needs to happen, and that could potentially be the one to finally get him up here.
Yeah, I mean, the question is like, where does he fit into the lineup, right? So Abreu is up here, and he seems to play most days, occasionally off against lefties. Duran plays basically every day. Rafael plays most days. So where do you fit him? That's kind of the toughest part, I think, for them. And so I get it. But at the same time, I think, and, I posted this yesterday, with the current lineup, is Roman Anthony, like, potentially already a top 5 hitter in this current, like, organization? You could argue that. Yeah. And so he's sitting down there in AAA, and it's like, all right, like, we want to, and we don't have to go into the rants of Cora and his love for like guys like Hamilton and Romy and Toro and all that, but like they need to find a way to get him up here because I think he is very clearly a top 9 bat in this organization, and that he should be up there playing every day one way or another. So if that means pulling a guy like Rafaela to the infield, is that ideal because of like where his best spot is in center field? No, but Duran can handle center. I think Abreu could even handle center. Roman Anthony has played some center, like in AAA. They would still be pretty good defensively if you moved Durant to center and put Roman in left. And you could move a guy like Rafaela and put him in like a utility role. Have him play a little bit of everywhere. He could play, first, second, third. He could play the 3 outfield spots, and he can kind of intertwine and get plenty of at bats. He has been swinging it a little bit better as of late, so it's a little tough to like get him out of the lineup. But he can play some second, and until Campbell seems to figure it out, right? Like he's been slumping after a hot start. And so they could kind of just continue to play the hot hand, and that's how they need to play it out. He needs to be up here. He needs to be playing every day. Like it's just kind of that simple. I understand like the reasons why they're not, and there's probably financial motivation behind it in terms of like his clock and getting an extra year of control and all that. But if we talk about the crap, like are the Red Sox doing what's best to win? Unless Roman Anthony's up here, I don't think you can argue that they are. Like it's really that simple for me.
No, I agree, and I think we talked about it last time. You said Cora's love for guys like Abreu and Hamilton and Roman Gonzalez, guys like that. In no world are they better, like pinch hitters or off the bench bats than Roman Anthony is. Even if you bring him up, and I get the lefty thing. If you wanted to give Willie Abreu a breather, because he's been terrible for the past month or so, month and a half in terms of his bat. But then again, he's a lefty, and Cora doesn't like to do the lefty things, lefty things. But with Cora, it's too cautious in a world where now you can't be as cautious as maybe you have been in the past when it comes to giving guys breaks, giving guys days off. Like you aren't as good of a team as you once were when you first came up here in 2018, certainly not in 2021. And you talk about kind of where we could potentially move if we're going to move Rafaela off. It would be tough because Story is there. He's a veteran. But when he first came to the Sox, it was a month, maybe half a month before he got injured for the rest of the year. But he played second base with Xander at short. Like, is that an option to move Rafaela to short, where he's kind of played a bit more even last year, and then move Story back to second base, give Campbell a couple nights off? There's an option as well. Again, it would be tougher to kind of get Story on board with that, given his veteran status, etc. And then you're already asking another veteran to move off his position. But yeah, there's no real excuse for that for Roman Anthony to be in AAA, especially when you talk about like the service time manipulation, the Super 2, things like that, the extra year of service time. Is Breslow even going to be here by the time he is in his 6 years of service time? Probably not, the way things are going now. So it's a way, I think, for Breslow to continue to talk to ownership and say, I have a plan. It's him trying to basically preserve his job status as the chief baseball officer. And is it the right move? No. But is it a way for him to potentially secure his job? I think that's certainly on the table.
Yeah, and I can tell you part of the other reason why Roman's not up here, and it's Cora doesn't want to bat rookies left on left. Yeah. They're already doing that with Mayer, right? So if you bring Anthony up here and he's also not doing that, all of a sudden you put yourself in a jam. Ooh, excuse me.
Yeah,
long day. But so I think that's kind of the issue for them right now is what do you do if they want to stick with that recipe? And the answer is I don't think you stick with that recipe. It's kind of that simple. I get Toro has played a little bit, decent lately. Romy is a decent player. Hamilton sucks, but like one or two, sometimes three of these guys are playing every day, while Roman Anthony sits in AAA. Like when you break it down of like, oh yeah, all these excuses, it really just comes down to that. And it's who would you rather in your starting lineup right now Roman Anthony or Abraham Toro? Roman Anthony, Romy Gonzalez. Roman Anthony, David Hamilton. Like, the answer is Roman Anthony. Like, let's just face it for what it is. And you can make it all, like, they can make all these excuses, but that's what it comes down to. So, when we always talk about are they doing what's best to win, the answer is no, because when you ask that basic question, the answer is they are not. And so until they do that, you're gonna get backlash, and and it's not like, I don't think anyone's saying that Anthony will come up here and be the savior. They got other issues. With Bregman being injured, Story's not been good enough. The hitting as a whole has been dog shit as of late. The pitching is way too inconsistent.
Yep.
Way too inconsistent. Even the bullpen has, been a little too bumpy up and down than you want. When Roman's not going to come be some savior, but when he's very clearly a top 9 hitter on this team, he should be playing. And he also has nothing to prove in AAA. Like, he's just down there shredding, just waiting for them to give him the call. Every time the guy hits a home run, he does the little phone symbol to.
Does he really? I haven't seen that.
Yeah, indirect gesture.
Good. You could get away with keeping him down in AAA if you were winning games and if you were in first place and or like threatening for a playoff spot. As you said, this team has far too many issues, especially with hitting, for him to continue to be on the bench, to continue to put out lesser than talent. And you look at a team like the Royals, who are in a similar situation. Granted, I just looked up their stats and their standings. They're above 500, unlike us, but they're still in 4th place after a pretty good year last year. They just called up their number 1 hitter, Jack. I'm going to butcher his last name, Caglione or whatever, however you pronounce it. Kind of in a similar boat. Like, they needed hitting, they needed a spark, and he, they thought he could give it to them, so he got called up. Why is Roman Anthony not in the same boat? Why did Breslow not want to, follow suit and do it? I really have no idea. As you said, there's no excuse for it. Like, to have him sitting in AAA while this team continues to, trot out lesser than talent, while Cora continues to protect his boys and David Hamilton and Romy Gonzalez because he likes them and they're nice to him and say nice things about him. It's kind of the same thing we said about Bill Belichick and all the things at the end of his tenure here with not doing what's best for the team. So it's certainly frustrating. It definitely doesn't give the confidence that him and or Breslow are on the same page. Certainly doesn't give any credibility to like him being the right choice to lead this team, even after the extension last off season or middle of last season. So there's really no excuse, and it's becoming, you're risking like another year of just tepid fan base who doesn't really care, even after front office went out this year and it answered the bell with everyone saying they were uninterested in baseball games, and now the fans are about to be there too.
Yeah, interest is still pretty high right now, right? And that's why the noise is pretty legit. Mm-hmm. And so, it's not that fans are really uninterested. It's in that they're interested and they're just frustrated. And that's why, Cora's seat has gotten progressively hotter as the year goes on, because the fans are starting to wonder, is he actually as good as we felt he was? Right. And as you mentioned, he hasn't done much. He hasn't done much winning since 2018 when they won. Mm-hmm. And they had a phenomenal roster. So the question is fans hung on to that and said, okay, he's a good manager. He's a player's manager. I like the guy. I don't think he's a bad manager, but the fact of the matter is we're now year in and year out that this team rarely ever plays above expectation. Rarely ever. And so now you've got a team that actually has some legitimate talent, and they're continuously performing below what they should. And so your question mark goes, why is that? Who do you blame? And we did this last week, but like, are you putting the blame on a guy like Cora? Are you putting the blame on the hitting or pitching coaches? Are you putting the blame on the players? Ultimately, I think a lot of it still kind of just rests on the players. But, as things go on, it naturally starts to wear on you to say, is Cora just not the answer? And I don't know if ownership will ever pull the trigger after, what we know and how they feel about him. But the question starts to become like, is Cora not the guy to lead the Boston Red Sox anymore?
I think, and I hear you on the ownership not wanting to pull the trigger. They are very in tune with PR, as we know. And if we saw it this offseason when the noise gets loud enough, they eventually wake up and pull the trigger. So I don't give in to the notion that they will never fire Cora. I think I was one of the first hosts between you, Ben, and myself to suggest that Cora might be on the hot seat this year based on recent trends of the same things happening over and over again with poor hitting in runners in scoring position, poor pitching, poor base running, poor fielding, everything. It's just the same thing over and over again. The only time he's actually ever won was when he had an absolutely historically stacked roster in 2018. They shit the bed in 2019, and then he came back from a cheating scandal and reinvigorated the team that finally had fans in the stands for the first time in 2 years. So I do think he's overrated, but I think in terms of who I put blame on the most, did he pick the pitching and I know he didn't pick the pitching coach, but did he pick the hitting coach, or was that a Breslow guy too?
He's been around for a bit.
Because I remember
that's a core guy.
Okay, I remember he had to fire the third base coach, or there was something about him firing some coaches or being forced to fire.
He fired the pitching coach. I forget what his name was.
Yeah, the guy before Bailey.
Yeah, a couple of years ago. I forget what his name is off the top of my head, but Bailey was more of a Breslow guy too.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily maybe it's just I trust Bailey more, and I actually don't think he knows what he's doing. It's just the team's been a little too inconsistent. I don't think Bailey's seat is really hot.
I wouldn't say it's hot.
I think Feets is the hitting coach. His seat's hot. His
seat has to be hot.
Yeah, and so I think he's the most likely to get canned during the season. Cora getting canned during the season is highly unlikely, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But I could see if things are still not going well over the next few weeks, month, maybe month and a half, that they look to make a change. Because I think their approach is just simply not very good. They're getting killed, and Matt McCarthy was talking about this on air last week. He was dramatic when he was doing it, but they had one game. It was they had 15 strikeouts, and 13 of them came on fastballs, and the other 2 came on sinkers, the strikeout pitch. You as you should be hitting fastballs better than anything else, right? And so it seems like their approach is to react to the fastball and expect the off speed. And so teams are it's tough to do that when in the end, usually a pitcher's best pitch is their fastball, right? The ball that they're most consistent with it is their fastball. So when you start putting yourself at a disadvantage, the question is, okay, well that comes to an approach viewpoint, and that's where you look at the hitting coach and say, this is an issue. Maybe you look at a guy like Jason Varitek. I don't know exactly what his role is, but I do know he's a game management guy,
a strategy guy type thing, right? Yeah.
Is he playing a factor in that type of stuff? Who's making the decisions of how we're going to approach the game at the plate? And why are we having games consistently where you're scoring 1 or 2 runs? Someone has to change your approach if it's not working. It's not
I
like they're
remember,
going back and forth through
yeah,
approaches and nothing's working. They're sticking with one, and it's just simply not producing enough runs.
I remember when Cora first got hired. His approach was swing early, swing often, and sit fastball, and it won. They won a lot of games with that. They obviously won a World Series, and I remember Mookie Betts was one of the best at it. Like you sit fastball, first pitch, you swing out of it, and he won MVP. So I do. I agree with you. I think that it's Spatsy, or however you pronounce his last name. Um, that he is probably the first one to go. The reason I asked if it was if he's Cora's guy or if it's a Breslow guy, is depending on that answer, I would blame the person who hired him. I think using your same logic about what you said about the hitting approach, I think could also be applied to Andrew Bailey's approach with the pitching staff. People, in the beginning of last year when you first came in, they were sitting fastball. You kept throwing them like curveballs, breaking pitches, off speed pitches, whatever. Everybody adjusted, and now everyone sits those pitches, and they sit on them and they hit them out of the park. And as you said as well, a pitcher's most comfortable pitch is oftentimes the fastball. So if you're getting away from the fastball, logically you are inherently off your game. So I don't know if that's what's happening to them, but the logic is certainly there that the pitchers are probably not as comfortable throwing majority off speed pitchers, majority sweepers or whatever. And you can kind of see it. They're like Hauk's taken a major step back. Bayo, I think we've seen his ceiling, and it's what it is. It's what it is. He's a 3-4 guy. The only one who's really good and has been consistently good this entire year have been the pitchers who weren't here last year. Chapman, obviously Crochet, guys like him. I mean,
Well, that's part of
Bueller's
what's so
okay, but
shocking. Like that's
yeah,
what's so shocking is we said, okay, they need a right-handed bat. They got Bregman. They need an ace. They got Crochet. They need a good bullpen guy to replace Jensen. Chapman's been great, and they're worse right now than they were
they're
last year.
worse.
So it's like,
So then, what does that tell you about the coaching staff? It's got to be Cora, and I think that's to answer your question of who's to blame. It has to be. You have to look at him first, and obviously the hitting coach is a part of that as well because it's the approach aspect of it. But yeah, it's insane to think that every hole we had last year has been filled, and we're somehow worse.
yeah, like you said, and we can wrap up the Red Sox on that note, and that's the sense that like eventually, and he kind of made the comment. I think it was after last night's game, like the team's not getting better, and like ultimately, you look at the manager, like he's not like lying about that. So will they make the changes? I think that one way or another, they're going to be making some moves. I've heard whispers that we could see some shakeups if things continue to be not to par over the next couple weeks, whether that's to the roster, whether that's shaking up the coaching staff a little bit. I don't know exactly, but something needs to happen. Yeah. All right. Let's transition a little bit. I want to do a little bit of Patriots. Obviously, we saw OTAs. Do you have any general thoughts so far on OTAs? I know Diggs is back. How May has been performing, maybe the wide receiver group.
Yeah. I mean, it started out rough for May. Predictably, Boston media took that and ran with it, thinking it was going to be a disaster. But like anything, it takes time to learn a new system. And I think Josh is going to be – I think they're going to be in a good spot with Josh. The two guys that I really liked, we've talked about Kyle Williams before. I think his release package is exceptional. I think it's something that we haven't had. I mean, we have Diggs now, but something we haven't had. A guy who can get off the line and have that straight line speed in a while. So I'm really high on him. This Efton Chisholm kid, love him too. Everything I've heard from him has been, just that old school slot receiver, old school Patriots slot receiver, Jules, Dola, everybody like him. And I would not be surprised if the quote unquote surprise cuts are ones everyone's talking about, Javon Baker and Jalen Polk. Polk would be a bit more surprising. I think Baker is pretty much working himself out of the roster at this point. There was a video, I think it was Andrew Callahan, but it might have been somebody else, posted on Twitter. Like OTAs, 101 drills. It was an out route, like a 10-yard out, and he cut it slow, and then he drifted like 8 yards while catching it, and the ball was like at his ankles. Where if he snapped it off and got it where he was supposed to cut, it would have been right in his chest. So I think he's kind of working his way out. But the other connection that I'm really high on, I'm really excited about every time I open up Twitter or scroll, Bleacher Report, whatever, is Travion Henderson. I think he's going to be a weapon in McDaniel's offense. Super excited about what him and Drake May are bringing to the table, and I think they're going to have a two-way connection both in the backfield, but also maybe out wide as well.
Yeah, the Drake May first practice, he threw 4 interceptions. Everyone was having a meltdown, even though no one actually saw what they were, and they were just like, "Oh, it sucks. We're done." Now the storyline's been the opposite so far. The last few practices that he's looked great. Henderson has supposedly looked well. In the biggest name that's like kind of making noise is Efton Chisholm. He seems to be getting some snaps with the number ones. He showed up apparently with I think 7 grabs in the last OTAs. And so you look at that and you say, okay, if he is really going to be pushing for a spot, they got just a bunch of decisions to make, right? So they got about 9-ish, 10-ish guys that are going to be fighting for 6 or 7 spots. If we assume Douglas, Diggs, and Williams are 3 locks, that leaves 3, maybe 4 spots for the rest of the guys. Booty, I think, is on the inside looking out. I think he's in a pretty good spot. That would be 4. Hollins, they signed him. They just signed him, so I would think that he has an inside track as well. That would give you 5. And if you're talking about only 1 or 2 more spots, that includes Chisholm, Polk, Baker, and Bourne, right? So who is getting those last 2 spots? And for me, it's I think Bourne is a pretty solid player, but he's 30 years old. He's making some decent money. They could save money if they cut him. I think that he's on the outside looking in likelihood. Because as much as Polk has been a big disappointment and Baker is a head case, but they're still young and cheap, right?
Yeah.
We haven't really seen what exactly Baker can or could not be.
Sure.
And so they're both young and cheap. And when you combine that, I think that in a team like this, in the position that they are, they're a little bit more likely to take a shot on whoever they like the most out of those 2 than give a guy like Bourne, who has no long-term future here, a roster spot to go into the season. Now, obviously, injuries can change all this, right? Diggs isn't ready for whatever reason, or Williams get hurt, whatever. But as it stands, I think Bourne's looking on the way out. Polk or Baker is going to be battling for maybe 1 spot, and Chisholm will make a push for it, right? He's supposedly been working in the kick return game too, so maybe there's a chance that they keep 7, and a guy like that can fit, find his way into the mix. But at the same time, not to really play this game like it's an actual truth, but he's a white slot guy in a Josh McDaniels offense. It's more just irony. It's more like a coincidence than anything else. But we talk about Welker into Edelman into Amendola.
The headlines wrote themselves, really.
Yeah, it's something to think. Even Jacoby Myers was pretty good here. These slot guys that can find their way open on the inside, know how to play the position. I've said it so many times when talking about receivers, is you trust the guys that can create separation, know their routes, know the in and outs of those routes, know how to create leverage, know where they're supposed to be, and just simply know how to get open. those guys last, right? We talk about the Keenan Allens of the world, the Adam Thielens, the Cooper Kupps, the Puka Nakuas. The list could really go on. Even like guys, some outside guys like Devontae Adams, or DeAndre Hopkins. Like these guys can just get open. And so that's what fits the most in the NFL. Height, size, strength, that's great and all. And it does bring some receivers into that next tier. But if you're not good at the other things of the game, you're never going to last. So when you look at a guy like Chisholm or really any other guy, if you can get open, you're going to find a spot. So, people want to write Chisholm off because he's undrafted. If the dude comes out in training camp and is getting open and creating separation and is a great target for the receivers, Josh McDaniels is going to want to keep him. It's kind of that simple.
Yeah, it's going to go off of that too. It's really rare that you hear a guy's name every single day, every single practice, every single OTA, making plays as involved as he is in the passing game and just the offense in general, and he doesn't make the cut. I think, especially with a team like this, you weren't really in a position to play like favorites, if you will. Going back to a guy like Bourne, I don't think he really does anything that the other 7-8 guys on the team don't do. And he's older and he's more expensive. So I think, going back to who's a lock, who's not, I think he's certainly on the outside looking out. I would say that the 4 locks, I would agree with you, are Booty, Diggs, who else did we just say? Douglas, and I'm forgetting one.
Williams.
Who am I forgetting? Williams, thank you. And I think Chisholm makes that cut, and I think one of the two, Baker and Polk, would be the guys to round that out. But again, it's really, really rare that you see someone getting as involved and getting as many looks and getting just talked about as much as Efton Chisholm is, and he doesn't make the team. So him being a cut, I would be super surprised about, and I can't see happening.
Yeah, I think that they put themselves in a situation where they're going to have a lot of bodies, and I don't think we'll see a major move soon in terms of that wide receiver room. But I could see like early to mid spring, not spring training, to training camp. They move on from one of these guys and get ahead of it.
Yeah.
Right. And give, whether it's a trade, like a guy like Kendrick Bourne, early into training camp, one of the receivers around the league gets hurt. A guy like Bourne is gonna fit the role. Even now, like there are teams still searching. Like a team like Pittsburgh, they're bringing in Gabe Davis right now. Like Kendrick Bourne would fit well with what they could use right now.
Yeah, San Fran keeps calling his name too.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, San Fran's got after Pearsall right now with Ricky with Brandon Ayuk out, they don't have a lot at receiver, and so I think even like Dallas, like a team like Dallas, they could use a number 3 after Liam and Pickens. Like you could go around the league and say, okay, Bourne could fit here, and he doesn't cost a ton for a new team. He doesn't cost a ton in general, but like when we talk about win now teams, Bourne should have some fit around the league. And so again, when you're deciding like, who do we want to keep? If you could get a 6th or a 7th, Bourne, not that that's anything special, it could just be worth moving on from him. He's just I love the guy. He's a really good guy, good locker room fit, but he just doesn't have a long-term spot in this roster. So,
I think he did a lot for when he first came in here with Mac. He was kind of like the transitional piece, but I think his skill set is kind of been overshadowed. It's kind of been overlooked now. So I certainly would be surprised if they moved on from him, either trade or cut.
Yeah, that would be my bet right now. And like I said, a lot could change depending on them and injuries and all that. But I'm betting on him being the odd man out. When I look at the rest of the offense, I think Strange was getting a good amount of time at left guard. I think he's the front runner there. We know the rest of the O-line for the most part. Defensively, nothing's been over too, unsurprising of what we're heard. Tavai got injured. Supposedly he's out until probably training camp, which, as long as he's healthy for the start of training camp, really it doesn't matter. They're doing nothing for the next 2 months.
Exactly.
But do you have any, we'll wrap it up here. Do you have any final Patriots thoughts in what you're feeling? Even the coaching staff, obviously we're getting our first little kind of insights to the Vrabel world with McDaniels there and Tyrell Williams.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really heard much about Tyrell Williams. Just maybe that's just based on what who I follow and what have you. And we don't obviously do a whole lot in training camp or the OTAs for the defense. But one guy on the defense, keeping it there, is Craig Woodson. Every time, again, going back to F and Chisholm, every time I open up Twitter, scroll Bleacher Report, ESPN, or whatever, his name pops up. Craig Woodson's name keeps popping up. We talked about him at the draft. The true free safety, someone who can kind of play that center field for them, a guy that we haven't really had in a long time since Devin McCourty. So once we kind of get the pads on and start seeing what really happens, I'm super excited to watch him play. I think he can be sort of like an under the radar addition because just based on his draft status. But I think he'll certainly continue to work his way and keep playing his way into the starting lineup, but become a starter in the league, and then that kind of creates more pressure on who. Speaking of wide receivers, on the flip side, which one of these safeties is maybe an odd man out between just the sheer number of between Peppers and Mapu and whoever else, Duggar, that we have. I think Craig Woodson will certainly insert himself into that and kind of make the GM and everyone else kind of sweat a little bit. And who do we cut? Who do we keep?
Yeah, Woodson's another guy that supposedly kind of looks pretty versatile out there. Again, we're not in pads. It's tough to kind of get any type of real judgment on these guys. But early word is he looks pretty good. And if he you look at a guy like Peppers, he might be looking for a new team soon enough. Tucker, I think, makes a little too much money. I don't think that he would be gone. Mapu's cuttable, pretty cuttable, very cuttable. But do they move on from him? I think he's I could see a guy like Vrabel really liking his game and maybe moving him around and stuff like that. So I think that he would be a guy before Peppers that stays. But you got Hawkins too out there who played some decent ball. I heard Alex Austin has been getting some reps inside. I remember when we had Callahan on here, he mentioned that Vrabel wanted to get a little bit bigger inside. So that makes a lot of sense. With Carlton Davis now opposite of Gonzo, Alex Austin doesn't have a spot outside, really. So moving him inside could be a really solid option. We'll see how that plays out. There's going to be good competition all around the roster, which is really exciting. And I don't necessarily think that they're done, right? We talked about Ayuk last year. That didn't happen until what was it? Mid-August?
Late August, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. If something comes about, a receiver, is on the out, something like that, I think that they'll be in the game. They got plenty of cap space still. Not that they should just spend it because that's not how it should work. But
yeah,
there's room to improve. Early signs overall, it's as expected for the most part. Nothing special. You're not gonna get too riled up about anything in OTAs. Even if you really could if you wanted to. Oh, look at that guy do that drill! Wow, great.
That was so fast.
He's super fast. I see Kyle Williams, the video of him getting off the line of scrimmage. The dude can get off the line of scrimmage. He's just it's a natural movement, him getting off. And it looks pretty impressive, but at the same time, it's all right, well, it's great. It's a dry rep. Okay.
I've firmly fallen under that category of like getting all hot and bothered watching those videos. But then I look back and I'm like, that's a 50-year-old coach he's playing against, and like maybe pump the brakes a little bit, Zach. Like I get it. So certainly once you're in shorts and a tee, it's a lot different than actual pads. But yeah, we'll see. Like I said, defense, hard to kind of get a gauge on where they're at too. But what I'm looking for, obviously, OTAs are kind of more of like a tempo thing, getting everyone comfortable and just back out there. But it's like what I see from, like I said, May and Henderson, Drake May and Kyle Williams seem to be getting a connection. Obviously, Ethan Chisholm as well. Hopefully, Stephon Diggs can get out there and kind of stay on land for a bit. And hopefully he's still in Foxborough and kind of get some more reps with Drake May. And then obviously as we get to training camp, once the pads get on, we'll see more about the defense. But so far, so good.
I mean, well, a lot of it's kind of just wait and see for the Patriots, and that's why, this time of the year is a little bit slow in the sporting news world, and that's why we're kind of wrapping it up pretty quickly this week. We will be back next week. We'll probably do about a couple more weeks until we take a little bit of an off-season break. And by off-season, I mean midsummer is in terms of like talking points. It gets a little slow in the heart of the summer.
For so many times in a row.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll be back next week. Hopefully Ben's back and he can stop prioritizing his children. I'm gonna have to speak with him. But any final words, thoughts about Boston sports in general? Who do you want the Bruins to sign?
I don't know. I don't even know much about the coaches that are left.
I couldn't tell you virtually much of that. We don't even know really who's the final two guy.
Yeah,
like we know Sturm has some. Supposedly he's like an up and coming guy, but he also has a Bruins connection. There's Leach who was here as an assistant. I heard like he might be one of the finals, but we really don't know, which is odd. Like they haven't leaked much of anything. Supposedly they're going to announce it. That was supposed to be early this week, but we're now at the end of the day on Wednesday and nothing's been. So we'll wait and see there. The Celtics, I don't know. Is Giannis becoming a Boston Celtic this offseason?
It just feels like it's salary. If you look at the dump salary, I don't see adding his salary to the table and making it make sense.
They would have to move They would have to move Holiday, Porzingis, and like Hauser all out and just bring in Giannis. Something like that.
I'd be for it if they can figure it out. I'll be all for it, but I'd be surprised if it happened.
I mean, we'll see what happens, but all right, that's gonna do it for this week. We appreciate you all joining us live. This will be up on Apple and Spotify and YouTube within the next 24 hours. So until the next week, we'll raise the banner. We appreciate you all listening, and goodbye.
Goodbye.